Welcome to The Explainer. I am so pumped you're joining us today because we're going to unpack something that is literally fundamental to the human experience. We're looking at how the ancient, innate power of storytelling has evolved into today's complex and sometimes incredibly perilous digital information landscape. We're going to dive into Dr. Susan Edwards' core essay on the power of stories, along with Theme 7 from the Honors Program Guide, and we'll look at exactly how stories actually shape our reality. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the biology of storytelling. Second, empower, suppress, and steal. Third, the information landscape. Fourth, the scale of the threat. Fifth, the anatomy of disinformation. And finally, navigating the digital curtain. Section 1, the biology of storytelling. Why we are wired for narrative. You see, storytelling isn't just some casual art form or a fun way to pass the time. It is actually a biological survival mechanism that is baked right into our DNA. I absolutely love how author Lisa Cron frames this. She says, story, it turns out, was crucial to our evolution, more so than opposable thumbs. Opposable thumbs let us hang on. Story told us what to hang on to. I mean, how brilliant is that framing? Historically, stories are what helped humans make sense of a really chaotic and dangerous world. They formed the absolute basis of how we acquire knowledge and interact with each other.
And there's actually hard science backing up that feeling of getting totally lost in a good book or a movie. MRI scans literally show that listening to a story causes a physiological change. It synchronizes the brain waves of the listener right up with the storyteller. Neuroscientists have found that when we identify with characters, our brains get hit with dopamine, it enhances our learning, and it actively builds empathy. It quite literally makes us feel less lonely. We are essentially hardwired to believe and internalize the narratives we hear.
Section 2, empower, suppress, and steal. The dual nature of storytelling. Now, because we are so biologically primed for narrative, we really have to look at its dual nature. This biological power is a massive double-edged sword. Stories can be profound tools for healing, sure, but they can just as easily become weapons of control. Author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie points out that while stories can empower us, humanize us, and even repair broken dignity, they can also be weaponized. They're used to dispossess and malign silenced voices. They can be stolen, and crucially for the rest of our explainer today, they serve as highly effective avenues for propaganda, spreading both misinformation and disinformation.
Section 3, the information landscape. The dark side of modern storytelling.
Diving deeply into Theme 7 of our source text, we have to look at how this ancient narrative power translates into our modern, data-driven era. To understand the dark side of modern storytelling, we really need to draw a hard line between two critical terms, as defined by the City University of New York Graduate School of Journalism. Misinformation is the unintentional sharing of inaccurate or misleading facts. Basically, it's just a mistake. Disinformation, on the other hand, is the deliberate and covert dissemination of false information to mislead. Right? Intent is the only dividing line here between an honest error and a calculated manipulation.
Section 4, the scale of the threat. Our data explosion. To truly grasp why disinformation is so incredibly potent right now, we have to look at the environment it lives in. Our data explosion has created this perfect breeding ground for false narratives. Get ready for this staggering number, 328.77 million. That is the number of terabytes of information produced globally every single day. The global information space literally doubles every 18 months. This creates an incredibly confusing environment where the actual truth easily gets buried under a mountain of data, leaving us super susceptible to clear, simple, but totally false stories. And then we pair that insane data explosion with this number, 4.95 billion. Back in January 2021, that was the number of active social media users worldwide. That is roughly 71% of the entire Earth's population. Because stories are so easily accessible on these platforms, misinformation diffuses at absolute lightning speed, which makes it nearly impossible to correct once it's out there in the wild.
Section 5, the anatomy of disinformation. How fake stories take hold. So let's shift gears and look at the actual mechanics of how these digital falsehoods operate in the real world. We can analyze a specific, seemingly harmless case study to see exactly how a fake story takes hold. It brilliantly illustrates the life cycle of modern disinformation. Step 1. A fake website creates a story claiming Disney World was suing to lower its drinking age to 18. Step 2. Pure outrage and shock drive massive shares across Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Step 3.
Traditional media, specifically ABC 10 News, unwittingly picks up and covers the fake story. And finally, step 4. Fact-checkers like Snopes and researchers at Central Washington University pull the actual court records and prove the lawsuit didn't even exist. It just goes to show how easily social media can completely infect traditional news. But we have to remember that the motives behind all this aren't exactly new. Take this infamous quote attributed to newspaper publisher William Randolph Hearst regarding the Cuban Revolution of 1895. He told his illustrator, "You furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war." He basically wanted to incite U.S. intervention simply because it would be great for his newspaper's circulation. Modern clickbait and tactical disinformation share those exact same historical roots in financial and political motives.
So, the really crucial point here is understanding exactly why we fall for it. Researchers have identified several key drivers of false beliefs: a lack of analytical thinking, basic cognitive failures, the illusion of truth you get from repeated exposure, raw emotion, and our own deeply ingrained worldviews. And honestly, the most alarming part is the continued influence effect. That's the psychological phenomenon where we hold on to false beliefs and let them actively influence our reasoning even after they have been factually corrected. Wild, right?
Section 6. Navigating the digital curtain. Looking behind the illusion. Now, this modern landscape is definitely tricky, but we are not helpless here. We can learn to spot the man behind the curtain and look past the illusion. To do that, we actually need to challenge our own assumptions about disinformation always being purely evil by categorizing it. There's malicious versus tactical. Malicious disinformation includes things like financial scams and divisive political propaganda. But tactical disinformation has actually been used as a life-saving tool. A perfect example of this is the Allied forces during World War II, who successfully ran a massive disinformation campaign to convince Hitler the D-Day invasion would target Calais rather than Normandy. Ultimately, disinformation is a tool, and its impact depends entirely on the hands wielding it.
So, how do we actually combat the malicious spread of false narratives in our daily media diet? Well, the source material offers some really practical, scientifically backed solutions. We basically need to play offense and defense. First, offer factual information proactively. Get ahead of it before the fake news takes root. Second, stage direct information interventions when falsehoods pop up. And third, repeat and reinforce those facts consistently. That repetition is key to fighting that continued influence effect we talked about earlier. The United Nations pointed out something fascinating. We now possess the entirety of human knowledge right in the palms of our hands. But that also means misinformation can ricochet around the globe in a matter of seconds. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. With all of that knowledge sitting right there at your fingertips, which stories will you choose to believe, and which will you critically question? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, stay focused, and always look for the true story.